Okay, so welcome to our third day on talking about or working with the inner critic. And today I'm going to start. I just want to talk a little bit about thoughts. And in the guided meditation, we're going to turn towards thoughts. We're going to work with thoughts, and I'll talk about it some more in the Dharmette afterwards. And there's this way in which if we turn towards thoughts instead of just thinking like, oh, this thing is annoying, get out of here, I'm trying to meditate, which, let's face it, sometimes that is our attitude. We have this like, oh, shoot, why are you here? There's this tone of them not being welcome. But when we are willing to like turn towards thoughts, acknowledge them, and so I'm like, okay, come on in. You might as well be part of the mindfulness practice because you're here anyway. If we have that kind of like, turning towards them and inviting them in, there's this way in which that we are honoring thoughts, we are respecting thoughts. We are being inclusive by when we bring awareness to this common everyday experience of thoughts. And we all know it's such a big part of our experience. But there's this way in which we are honoring its nature or somehow dignifying their presence because they are here. And it becomes a gateway to our immediate experience. There's just another thing we can become aware of, and in that way you can just highlight the present moment experience and no longer be lost by them, no longer be pushed around by them. So there's this way in which we can just invite in our awareness, or maybe I should say the word receive the thoughts, because they are already there. We don't have to try to make our experience be different than how it is. And there's this way in just shifting our attitude towards thoughts is enormously powerful. Just shifting our attitude from please go away to like, oh, hello, there you are, come on in, right? It's very different. So there's lots of instructions that we often give on meditation retreats or here at 7 a.m.s, or, if we're going to do some teaching of the introduction to mindfulness. But maybe right here, I'll say there's two different ways in which we can think about thoughts. And one is the experience of thinking. So like, what does it feel like to have a thought? Is it constrictive, or do we feel like we're getting just lost and carried away by them? But the experience, the felt sense. And then the second way is to notice if there's a theme. Is there like planning, fantasizing, remembering, ruminating, and then of course, judging. So one, just the experience, and two, just to notice the theme. We don't have to get concerned with the exact content, but just noticing if there's a theme. And that's what we'll start with in this guided meditation. So, to begin with our meditation this morning, just tuning into the bodily experience as it is right now. How does the body feel? We can begin with a global assessment. Does it feel energized, or is it low energy? Is there a sense of okayness or even well-being? Is there a sense of general kind of discomfort or dis-ease? However it might be, can we just tune in and acknowledge and maybe even bow to it? Like, yep, it's like this right now. The bodily experience is like this right now. And then noticing that the body is breathing. The body breathes itself. Of course it does. You don't have to do anything intentionally. So tuning into, becoming sensitive to the experience of breathing. That is the bodily experience of breathing. Like, how does it feel to breathe? And then for just a few breaths, not all of them, just a few, we're going to extend the exhale just a little bit. The exhale often is associated with some relaxation or releasing some tension. It's just a physiological way the body works. So we can take advantage of that and just in a relaxed, easy way, intentionally extending the exhale just a tiny bit. Ah. Maybe it's associated with a sigh. Maybe not. Oh. Mm. And then allowing the breathing to return to normal, not changing it in any way. Just resting attention on the sensations of breathing, the experience of breathing, the embodiment of breathing. And tuning into any sense of okayness, any sense of well-being. Maybe it's delightful to connect with others, the Sangha and chat. Maybe it's delightful to know that you're doing this wholesome thing for yourself, this helpful thing for yourself. And then from this slight or maybe obvious or maybe very subtle sense of, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Bring your attention to a lovable being. A being that when you bring this being to mind just makes you smile. Whether it's an external smile or an internal smile. And just rest your attention there. With the loveliness of the lovable being in whatever way feels comfortable, easy, accessible for you. Of course, this includes lovable beings that are puppies or kittens, or maybe maybe you saw this really cute kitten video recently, and I'm chuckling because I did see a kitten video recently that was so charming. This little kitten that reached out and hugged a duck. I think this was going around the internet. Maybe some of you saw this. Apparently, I'm assuming they must have grown up together, these two creatures. It was sweet, silly and sweet. Can we allow ourselves to feel the silliness, sweetness, beauty, lovability, whatever it might be? Allowing the heart and the body to have this little bit of uplift. Allowing yourself to just feel, experience that maybe there's a slight sense of delight or an okay sense of okayness. I'm smiling. It makes me smile to think about these things. And then can we use this sense of delight, loveliness, warm-heartedness? Can we use that to source our experience, to fuel our experience? And I want to normalize if it's not there, you don't have access to it, that's perfectly fine too. The last thing we want is the tyranny of a guided meditation telling you should be one way when it's just not happening. That's perfectly okay. Whatever you're experiencing, can it be okay? And then just to tune into the experience of breathing. And bringing this attitude of warmth or delight into noticing the experience of breathing. Noticing the inhales and the exhales. And for now, when you find yourself lost in thought, just very simply, gently, maybe with this attitude of warmth, begin again with the sensations of breathing. And now, when you wake up or realize, oh, I've been thinking, you just recognize it as such. Just this very simple word, oh, thinking. And then return to the sensations of breathing. So recognize that thinking was happening in a relaxed, easy way. Very simple. Oh, yeah, okay, I was thinking. I'm going to return to the breath. No need to make it complicated, add stories to the stories. Just, oh, yeah, thinking. And then rest attention on the sensations of breathing. If you find that you're just lost in thought, just not really being mindfulness that much on breathing, that's okay. Can you just maybe tune into the exhale and notice, oh yeah, thinking is like this. And then have an inhale, and with the exhale, oh yeah, thinking is like this. What I'd like to point to here is the simplicity. Just noticing, yep, that was a lot of thinking. Okay. And come back to the experience of breathing. And without having to add an attitude of somehow it should be different. This is what minds do. They think. We're just noticing. Thinking happens. And then begin again with the sensations of breathing. Thinking is perfectly natural. Don't have to disparage it. When we recognize that we've been thinking, just meet it with a warm-hearted attitude. Thinking doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. And then simply begin again with the sensations of breathing. Okay, so this idea of noticing our thinking in a relaxed, simple way without having to add anything extra to it. So this is our third day of working on with the inner critic, and I've been describing this inner critic as kind of this interior, I'm using this word subpersonality, but I'm not a psychologist. I'm just using that in the, just not in a technical way by any means, but it's this way in which there's this voice that's like constantly putting us down or belittling us, and this voice of negativity that's blaming us and nagging us, and there's a strong sense of like, you should do this or you should not do that, or sometimes it's associated with this real sense of shame for just being who we are or existing, and it really has this quality of harshness and creates this attitude, this interior experience of harshness. And so I'm going to link this to thoughts that often this inner critic shows up as thoughts. And they might be like quiet thoughts that maybe we don't see so much, but it's just of the nature of thoughts that for the most part, most thoughts are self-referential, that they're these thoughts about me, whatever, there's just thoughts about who, like, there's this implicit sense of that there's this me at the center that needs to take care of something or do something, or everything is in relation to me, or however it might be. But there's maybe two things to notice about this, that these thoughts about me are always distorted in some kind of way. We don't think they are. We think they're accurate and true and precise, but they're distorted. And it's not until often that we can get away from being lost in thought all the time that we can start to see how distorted our thoughts are. And so, in one way that they're distorted is this idea of, always judging ourselves and putting ourselves down, disparaging ourselves, this inner critic that shows up. And for many of us, it just feels like normal. Well, of course, there's this inner critic putting us down. That's just the way it is. In fact, we might not even notice that they're negative or that they're critical. It just might be so familiar. It just feels like, okay, this is what the interior landscape is like. And I also want to normalize, this isn't true for everybody. This is 100% anecdotally, but those individuals that I recognize that grew up in the United States, they often have this inner critic. Maybe less so if you grew up outside of the United States. This is just Diana's observations, no scientific evaluation about that, just my simple observations. And so it can be enormously powerful to notice that we are having not only thoughts, but that they are judging us, and that not in a positive way, judging us in a way that is unhelpful. And there's this way in which the less we are aware of our judging thoughts, the more likely we're allowing them to kind of like chip away at our sense of self-worth or our sense of well-being. There's this way that just a little bit by little bit, it kind of like diminishes any sense of okayness or contentment or satisfaction that we might have. So these thoughts that are disparaging towards ourselves really take a toll. They're really taxing. And so it can be enormously helpful to just notice them. And then not only to notice them, but to kind of like take the rug out from underneath them, from away from the authority that they seem to have, the way that they like to masquerade around as they're the truth and accurate. And it's not the truth and it's not accurate. There's a way in which it's distorted. Of course, they're based on things that actually have happened in reality for the most part, not always. So I don't want us to say that, we have to completely ignore them, but so often they're twisting what's actually happening. So with mindfulness practice, a little bit what we did in the guided meditation of just noticing thinking, that activity to just notice like, oh, okay, I was lost in thought, but in a way that brings some warm-heartedness or some warmth to it, as opposed to like, oh, gee, lost in thoughts again. We can sometimes have that attitude, but if we can bring just a simple awareness of thoughts, then that helps us to discern what's helpful, what's not helpful, what's healthy, what's not healthy. Because there's this way in which the inner critic, if we don't notice, it just drones on and on and on. And sometimes if we do notice, then we're just critical of the critic, and that's just another way of droning on and on, right? It's just like maintaining this attitude of being critical and disparaging and judging in an unhelpful way. So when we notice that the thoughts are disparaging, they're pejorative, they are unhelpful towards us, we can isolate those types of thoughts that are unhelpful from other types of thoughts that are helpful. We need thoughts, of course we do, to plan, to communicate, to maybe our livelihood depends on thinking, and we need to solve problems in our daily life. How are we going to get that big bowl in the dishwasher? Whatever the problems that are meeting us in the day. So first is to notice thoughts. And then to second, can we isolate, can we separate those thoughts that are judging, I'll use this word, critical, disparaging, from the other ones. And so this is a skill that often requires that we bring mindfulness to our thoughts. And sometimes we're just so lost in thought that we can't do that. But is there a way in which we can separate, we can isolate, we can discern helpful, solving problems, communicating, planning, not helpful, beating ourselves up, making us feel like we're unworthy or shame or something like that? So part of the practice is to separate from the helpful from the unhelpful. So what's one way that we can recognize the unhelpful? I mean, the obvious ones are if the particular thoughts are obvious to you, like, if we hear these words like, you're worthless, oh, you're hopeless, if we hear those types of thoughts, okay, that's obvious, that's not helpful. It's really not helpful. But there's another way in which we can notice is the tone of the thoughts. Helpful thoughts often just have a neutral tone, but the unhelpful ones have this way of maybe this feeling like they're barking at you. The tone is maybe sharp and loud and harsh, something like that. Or maybe that we notice that it's not about a particular thing. Maybe the thought has, as I spoke about yesterday, has taken a specific event and just globalized it. Like, okay, you were lost in thought during meditation. And then the inner critic takes that one piece of data and says, oh, you're a terrible meditator. In fact, you're a terrible person. Like, why are we even bothering? Oh gosh, it's just so hard. It's just hard for me to even say these things out loud, right? It's painful. But there's so many ways in which the mind likes to do this. The inner critic likes to do this, take one little data point and then use a broad paintbrush to make something about our innate value, our innate worth. So that's another way if we can notice if the inner critic is arising these thoughts. as if it's challenging your innate value in some globalized way. And then a third way, which we might notice the tone of these unhelpful thoughts, if you're starting to feel weighed down, there's like, ugh. And, kind of like the posture, like, oh my gosh, this just feels too much. And thus we can start to feel like the energy just really dropping and feeling hopeless, feeling overwhelmed, like, oh, it's just too much. Those are thoughts that are not helpful, not helpful. So how can we work with this? First, as I said, we kind of like separate helpful thoughts, solving problems, communicating, planning. Unhelpful, inner critic, disparaging ourselves, making global assessments about our value. And then just label it. Judging is like this. Judgment is like this. And then just tune into the experience. Yeah, it feels heavy, feels crappy, doesn't feel good. And there's a way in which just the actual judging helps us to get a little bit disentangled from it. We're noticing it, but there's something about like tuning into the experience of judging, which is, mindfulness, being aware of. And the mindfulness has a little bit of uplift with it. The judging itself might be uncomfortable, but to be mindful of uncomfortable brings a little bit of space and uplift. So this just saying judgment is like this helps us to crystallize this understanding that we're judging. It helps this judgment to stand out, to separate from the other thoughts that are helpful. And then, but just to be careful here, there's no need to judge the judging. Judgment is like this, and I'm judging the judging. And then we can like judge the judging of the judging, and then off we go, right? So if you notice that, just say, judgment is like this. Just kind of stop with that. And it's like, judgment is like this. And then we can just see it as just a bunch of thoughts. It's just a bunch of thoughts. And what are thoughts? What are they? They're like, they're intangible. There's like, we can just blow them away, right? There's like, how many thoughts a day do you have? How many bazillion, quadrillion, right? It feels like that. So many. You'll have other thoughts later. So notice that you're thinking. Separate the helpful from the unhelpful. When you notice that there's judging, just label it. Say, judgment is like this. Judgment is like this. It feels like this. And that's a way that creates some space. And then you can like tune in, if you're meditating, tune into the sensations of breathing, or just continue doing whatever it is you're doing. So I'd like to add this to some of the instructions that I gave earlier in the week, because, whatever's available, right? When we're in the midst of the inner critic, we work with whatever's available. So on Monday, we had this expression, I'm doing the best I can right now. Maybe that comes after like judgment is like this, and I'm doing the best I can right now. And on yesterday, I gave the instructions to like tune in, like, how am I right now? Like just to tune into the felt experience as a way maybe to interrupt the inner critic. Maybe you could add today's instructions, like judgment is like this. And how am I right now? Or maybe it's just like judgment is like this. It's like this. It's just a bunch of thoughts. And our thoughts, they like to push us around. They can feel authoritative. They can feel weighty, but they're just thoughts. You'll have other thoughts. You were having other thoughts just a moment ago. We don't have to believe them or get as invested in them as often as we do or as much as we do. So today, like not disparaging the disparaging, Instead, just to say, disparaging is like this, just judgment is like this, and help take the sting out of it, or just make it simple. Just make it simple. So with that, I hope you have a day in which you can separate the unhelpful judging from the other types of thoughts. Thank you. Thank you all. I look forward to practicing together tomorrow. Deep bows to all of you. Be self-meta rather than self-critic. Oh, that's cute. I like it. I like it. Yes. Thank you for all of you. It's a beautiful thing to practice together. So nice to how you all support one another and support me and this feeling of community, even though we're all over. It's beautiful. Beautiful. Like, what would the world be like if everybody had this experience to be able to, be with other people who are warm-hearted and kind and generous? I think that we are like changing the world just by coming together. Like, why not have it start with us? As being open-hearted towards one another. It's fun for me to connect with you all, reading your chats. Debbie writes, we have grown together over the years, right? It's quite something that over the years, there's so many people tune in. It's a beautiful thing. I think that, I don't know, we shouldn't underestimate how powerful this is too. Debbie writes, we embrace every new voice that appears in the chat. Beautiful. I'm going to sign off now. See you tomorrow.